Hey guys, it's me, Rusty, here again with more MTG content. This time we're gonna have a quick look through the Transformers cards that will be coming out in the set boosters and collector boosters from the Brothers War set. How I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna go through the legend in question and then make suggestions for the direction that the deck might take. Now, before we go any further, I need to explain the two unique abilities that come with these Transformer cards, and they are: the first one is more than meets the eye, which means that you may cast the Transformer card in question for that cost. If you do, it enters the battlefield converted, and that means it enters the battlefield on its backside form. As of right now, all the costs associated with this ability are the casting cost of the Transformer in question, reduced by 1 or 2 generic mana. The second ability is Living Metal, and that is an alternative for the crew cost that it is given to the Transformers cards, making them creatures as long as it is your turn. This is probably since they are robots disguised as vehicles and don't need to be driven around by pilots. Now, to start things off, we have Prowl, Stoic Strategist / Pursuit Vehicle. Prowl Stoic Strategist is a 3 generic and a white for a 3/3 legendary artifact creature robot with more than meets the eye for 2 generic and a white, and Prowl reads: whenever Prowl attacks, exile up to one other target tapped creature or vehicle. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. And the second part is whenever a player plays a card exiled with Prowl, you draw a card and convert Prowl. Convert in this case basically means transform. Prowl converts into Prowl Pursuit Vehicle, a 2/3 legendary artifact vehicle with living metal, meaning that Prowl is a creature as long as it's your turn. And he has, whenever another creature or vehicle enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Prowl. If this is the second time this ability has resolved on this turn, convert Prowl. First, his ability on his robot form is an attack trigger, so a card like Aether Shield Artificer is a perfect fit for this deck. Now, we have more chances to guarantee a target for Prowl's ability with our own creatures, and the best options to target are creatures with a mana value of 2 or less, making sure we can cast them the same turn we exile them. So cards like Knight of the White Orchard, Spirit Companion, and Dawnbringer Cleric. And since Prowl's vehicle side cares about creatures entering the battlefield under our control, we can put more effects that care about that in the deck. Cards like Rumor Gatherer, Spirit of Bonds, or Mace of the Valiant. Basically, this is a white weenie deck to the core, not caring much about tokens, but more about small creatures. Next up is Ratchet Field Medic / Rescue Racer. Ratchet Field Medic is a 2 generic and a white for a 2/4 legendary artifact creature robot with more than meets the eye for 1 and a white. He has lifelink, and whenever you gain life, you may convert Ratchet. When you do, return target artifact card with mana value less than or equal to the amount of life you gain to this turn from your graveyard to the battlefield. And when you convert Ratchet, he becomes Ratchet Rescue Racer, a 1/4 legendary artifact vehicle with living metal, lifelink, and whenever one or more non-token artifacts you control are put into a graveyard from the battlefield, convert Ratchet. His ability triggers only once each turn. Once again, we have a mono-white commander that cares about life gain, and once again, cards like Peace of Mind, the Underworld Cookbook, and Trading Post are perfect fits for this deck. How you go about that is that you discard an artifact for the activation cost of the ability, gain the life, and then you can return the same artifact that you just discarded if it has a mana value less than or equal to the life you just gained. Now, all we need to do is balance between the cards that gain us life and artifacts that can sacrifice themselves, like the Speller's Capsule, Mind Stone, Navigation Orb, Fountain of Renewal, things like that. Next up, we have Jetfire, Ingenious Scientist / Air Guardian. Jetfire, Ingenious Scientist, is a 4 generic and a blue for a 3/4 legendary artifact creature robot with more than meets the eye for 3 and a blue. He has flying and remove 1 or more +1/+1 counters from among artifacts you control. Target player adds that much colorless mana. This mana can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells. And then you convert Jetfire. And once Jetfire is converted, he becomes Jetfire Air Guardian, a 3/4 legendary artifact vehicle with living metal, flying, and pay 3 blue, convert Jetfire, then adapt 3. And adapt 3 is if Jetfire has no +1/+1 counters on it, you put 3 +1/+1 counters on it. Now, I want to point out that Jetfire does not need to be able to adapt to be able to convert back into his robot form. That is just a consequence of activating his ability on his vehicle form. And since Jetfire's front face cares about any artifacts with +1/+1 counters, we can use creatures like Chromatron, Drillworks Mole, Steel Overseer, or the Clockwork creatures as a mana source. And for even more artifact creatures that will get +1/+1 counters on them through the course of the game, there are cards like Patchwork Automaton, Diamond Knight, Mere Prototype, and Apocryphite. Finally, for more ways to get +1/+1 counters on Jetfire, we have cards like Ring of Evil's Isles, Energy Chamber, and Throne of Geth. Now, maybe the mana generated by Jetfire's abilities can't be used to cast things other than artifacts, but it can still be used to activate abilities from permanents we control, like equipments, equip cost, and such. Next up is Blitzwing Cruel Tormentor / Adapted Assailant. Blitzwing Cruel Tormentor is a 5 generic and a black for a 6/5 legendary artifact creature robot with more than meets the eye for 3 and a black, and he reads, at the beginning of your end step, target opponent loses life equal to the life that player lost this turn. If no life is lost this way, we convert Blitzwing. And he converts into Blitzwing Adapted Assailant, a 3/5 legendary artifact vehicle with living metal, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose flying or indestructible at random. Blitzwing gains that ability until end of turn, and whenever Blitzwing deals combat damage to a player, convert it. Now, besides finding ways to give Blitzwing an aggressive keyword like Trample, Menace, or Death Touch, we should also fill the deck with cards that makes the incidental life loss for our opponents. Cards like Night Market Lookout, Vrock, Blood Tithe, and Retreat to Raga, and things like that. That's it? The only thing that gives this deck a direction is make the opponents lose even more life, so... Next up, we have Starscream Power Hungry / Seeker Leader. Starscream Power Hungry is a 3 generic and a black for a 2/3 legendary artifact creature robot with more than meets the eye for 2 and a black, flying, and whenever you draw a card, if you're the monarch, target opponent loses 2 life. And whenever one or more creatures deal combat damage to you, you convert Starscream. And he converts into Starscream Seeker Leader, a 2/3 legendary artifact vehicle with living metal, and flying, menace, and haste. Whenever Starscream deals combat damage to a player, if there's no monarch, that player becomes the monarch. And whenever you become the monarch, you convert Starscream. Now, the monarchy is a sort of a state that's tracked throughout the game. It both reads, at the beginning of your end step, if you're the monarch, you draw a card, and whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, that creature's controller becomes the monarch. Now, since this deck introduces the monarchy mechanic into the game, you are looking for a very aggressive deck that is trying to get the monarchy at any given chance. Cards like Mask of Memory and Bash His Blade can give us the damage and the fuel to keep fighting, and Mask feeds into the other focus of this deck to draw as many cards as possible while we are the monarch. Cards like Ancient Craving and all similar spells, enchantments like Underworld Connections and Greed, or even stuff like Otherworldly Atlas can get us the extra damage. Be sure to pack a healthy amount of supernatural stamina and all similar spells. Next up is Slicer, Hired Muscle / High Speed Antagonist. Slicer Hired Muscle is a 4 generic and a red for a 3/4 legendary artifact creature robot with more than meets the eye for 2 and a red. He has double strike and haste, and at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you may have that player gain control of Slicer until end of turn. If you do, untap Slicer, goad it, and it can't be sacrificed this turn. If you don't, you convert Slicer. And Slicer converts into High Speed Antagonist, which is a 3/2 legendary artifact vehicle with living metal and first strike and haste. And whenever Slicer deals combat damage to a player, convert it at the end of combat. Slicer doesn't really make for a very complicated deck. Most of it will be auras and equipment that benefit you whenever the creature they are attached to attacks. And yeah, that's it. That's the deck. Next up is RC Sharpshooter / Acrobatic Coup. RC Sharpshooter is a 1 generic, a red and a white for a 2/2 legendary artifact creature robot with more than meets the eye for a red and a white, and first strike. She reads, pay 1 mana, remove 1 or more +1/+1 counters from RC, It deals that much damage to target creature. Then you convert RC. And RC converts into Acrobatic Coup, which is a 2/2 legendary artifact vehicle with living metal. And whenever you cast a spell that targets one or more creatures or vehicles you control, put that many +1/+1 counters on RC. Then you convert RC. Since RC cares about having +1/+1 counters to activate a robot form ability, we can use cards like Angel Fire Ignition, Great Sword of Tyr, Ring of Alcas, and Citadel Siege to do that. And since we can convert her from her vehicle form to her robot form by casting any type of spell, we can just use auras like Conviction, Crown of Flames, Sentinel's Eyes, or Escape Velocity to make sure we have that. Next up is Blaster, Combat DJ / Morale Booster. Blaster Combat DJ is 3 generic, a red and a green for a 3/3 legendary artifact creature robot with more than meets the eye for 1, a red and a green. And other non-token artifact creatures and vehicles you control have modular 1. Now what that means is that they enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them, and when they die, you may move all of their +1/+1 counters that they had onto another artifact creature. Whenever you put one or more +1/+1 counters on Blaster, convert it. And he converts into Morale Booster, which is just a legendary artifact with modular 3 and pay X, tap it. Move X +1/+1 counters from Blaster onto another target artifact. That artifact gains haste until end of turn. If Blaster has no +1/+1 counters on it, convert it. Activate only as a sorcery. Okay, so besides the obvious inclusions of cards like Cauldron of Souls and Lesser Mastercore in case of infinite ETB's possibilities, this deck will probably want to balance a lot of self-sacrificing artifact creatures like Silphok Replica and artifact creatures that care about all the +1/+1 counters flying around, like Towashi Guidebot. And remember to put a sack outlets for your artifacts in case someone tries to exile them. Next up is Cyclonus, the Saboteur / Cybertronian Fighter. Cyclonus the Saboteur is a 2 generic, a blue and a black for a 2/5 legendary artifact creature robot with more than meets the eye for 5, a blue and a black. He has flying, and whenever Cyclonus deals combat damage to a player, it connives. Then if Cyclonus' power is 5 or greater, convert it. Now, connive means that you draw a card, then you discard a card. If you discarded a non-land card, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. Cyclonus converts, he becomes Cybertronian Fighter. That is a 5/5 legendary artifact vehicle with living metal and flying. And whenever Cyclonus deals combat damage to a player, convert it. If you do, there is an additional beginning phase after this phase. And a beginning phase includes the untap, upkeep, and draw step. Now, Cyclonus makes for an interesting commander since the damage trigger of his vehicle side is quite unusual. First, to get his power at a proper value of 5 or greater, we can just use things like equipment and auras or +1/+1 counters. Once we get the hit with his vehicle side, we will want some nice upkeep triggers for this deck, so I'll let you guys think about that. Next up, Flame War, Brash Veteran / Streetwise Operative. Flame War Brash Veteran is a 1 generic, a black and a red for a 3/2 legendary artifact creature robot with more than meets the eye for a black and a red. She reads, sacrifice another artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Flame War and convert it. Activate only as a sorcery. Her other ability is pay 1 generic mana, discard your hand. Then you put all exile cards you own with intel counters on them into your hand. We're gonna get to that in a second. So Flame War converts into Streetwise Operative, which is a 2/1 legendary artifact vehicle with living metal, menace, and death touch. And whenever Flame War deals combat damage to a player, exile that many cards from the top of your library face down. Put an intel counter on each of them, then you convert Flame War. Flame War wants one thing only, and that is to sacrifice artifacts, cause some damage, and exile some cards with intel counters. In the case of artifacts to sacrifice, we can run artifacts that want to be sacrificed, cards that create tokens that easily sacrifice, or effects that allow us to get artifacts back from our graveyard. A card that seems to greatly synergize with Flame War's vehicle side is Street Urchin from Baldur's Gate. Street Urchin is a 1 generic and a red for a legendary enchantment background that reads, commander creatures you control have pay 1 mana, sacrifice another creature or an artifact. This creature deals 1 damage to any target. I think this card is great for Flame War since her vehicle side has Death Touch, and we can use this to clear out the way from any blockers that our opponents may put up. Next up, we have Goldbug, Humanity's Ally / Scrappy Scout. Goldbug's Humanity Ally is a 1 generic, a white and a blue for a 3/3 legendary artifact creature robot with more than meets the eye for a white and a blue. And first ability reads, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking humans you control, and whenever you cast your second spell each turn, convert Goldbug. Goldbug converts into Scrappy Scout, a 1/3 legendary artifact vehicle with living metal that reads, human spells you control can't be countered, and whenever Goldbug and at least 1 human attack, draw a card and convert Goldbug. Now, for those confused as to who Goldbug is, this is actually Bumblebee after some character development he got when he was almost killed during a comic run back in 2006. As a commander, this is just a human tribal deck, simple and clean. Maybe if you want humans that benefit from attacking, since the pseudo protection that Goldbug gives on his robot side. A great card, should you take that route, that aggressive route, is Taranika, a Krollan Veteran. That is a 1 generic and 2 white for a 3/3 legendary creature human soldier with vigilance, and whenever Taranika, a Krollan Veteran, attacks, untap another targeted creature you control. Until end of turn, that creature has base power and toughness 4/4 and gains indestructible. And the reason for that is that as long as she's attacking, she can make Goldbug indestructible as long as he's attacking as well. Next up is Megatron Tyrant / Destructive Force. Megatron Tyrant is a 3 generic, a red, a white, and a black for a 7/5 legendary artifact creature robot with more than meets the eye for 1 generic, 1 red, 1 white, 1 black. He reads, your opponents can't cast spells during combat, and at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, you may convert Megatron. If you do, add colors for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn, and once Megatron converts, he becomes Destructive Force, a 4/5 legendary artifact vehicle with living metal, and whenever Megatron attacks, you may sacrifice another artifact. When you do, Megatron deals damage equal to the sacrificed artifact's mana value to target creature. If excess damage would be dealt to that creature this way, instead that damage is dealt to that creature's controller and you convert Megatron. So yeah, the man himself, Megatron, only cares about inflicting high amounts of damage to your opponents. First, Megatron's vehicle side cares about sacrificing an artifact to have him deal damage to a creature, so we're gonna need artifacts that want to be sacrificed but also have a high mana value. And to make sure we can convert Megatron into his robot side, we can use both cards that increase the amount of damage that he does, or just give him Death Touch, meaning that he will just do 1 damage to the target and the rest to the controller. Lastly, his robot side's ability doesn't care if he was the cause of the damage, so we can run things like Firebrand Archer, Cabal Paladin, and Forge Boss to increase the damage that we're throwing around. Next up is Optimus Prime Hero / Autobot Leader. Optimus Prime Hero is a 3 generic, a blue, a red, or a white for a 4/8 legendary artifact creature robot. He has more than meets the eye for 2, a blue, a red, and a white, and he reads, at the beginning of each end step, bolster 1. Now, to bolster, you choose the creature with the least toughness among creatures you control, and you put a +1/+1 counter on it. And his other ability is, when Optimus Prime dies, return it to the battlefield converted under its owner's control. And when Optimus converts, he becomes Autobot Leader, a 6/8 legendary artifact vehicle with living metal and trample. And whenever you attack, bolster 2. The chosen creature gains trample until end of turn, and when that creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, convert Optimus Prime. So, probably one of the most known characters of this franchise. Optimus Prime cares about creatures that want +1/+1 counters playstyle now, permanents that want to have +1/+1 counters to activate their abilities, or the good old proliferate sources. Don't forget to put cards that can bring Optimus back online in case he gets too focused by our opponents. Next up is Soundwave, Sonic Spy / Superior Captain. Soundwave Sonic Spy is a 1 generic, a white, a blue, and a black for a 5/4 legendary artifact creature robot. He has more than meets the eye for 2, a white, a blue, and a black, and he reads, whenever one or more creature tokens you control deal combat damage to a player, exile target instant or sorcery card with mana value equal to the damage dealt from their graveyard. Copy it, you may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. If you do, convert Soundwave. And he converts into Superior Captain, which is just a legendary artifact with whenever you cast a spell with an odd mana value, convert Soundwave. If you do, create Ravage, a legendary 3/3 black robot artifact creature token with menace and death touch. Whenever you cast a spell with an even mana value, convert Soundwave. If you do, create Laserbeak, a legendary 2/2 blue robot artifact creature token with flying and hexproof. So yeah, Soundwave's backside is not that exciting, but his front face has some nice build around ideas. That are having token making cards that can double or just benefit our tokens, and cards that help our tokens get through. I just find it funny that he can jam with the soldiers from the Imperium. Finally, we got to our last card, and that is Ultra Magnus Tactician / Armored Carrier. Ultra Magnus Tactician is a 4 generic, a red, a green, and a white for a 7/7 legendary artifact creature robot. He has more than meets the eye for 2 generic, a red, a green, and a white, and Ward 2. Whenever Ultra Magnus attacks, you may put an artifact creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. If you do, convert Ultra Magnus at the end of combat. And he converts into Armored Carrier. That is a 4/7 legendary artifact vehicle with living metal and haste. And he has Formidable. Whenever Ultra Magnus attacks, attacking creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. If those creatures have a total power of 8 or greater, convert Ultra Magnus. Now, yes, we will definitely want high CMC artifact creatures to drop with his robot side ability trigger. Generally things that either have an attack trigger or combat damage trigger. But we should also be placing cards that have an effect on our attacking creatures. Things like Ferocity of the Wilds, Gruul War Chant, Nobilities of War, and such. So yeah, that was all of my suggestions for deck ideas using each of the new Transformers cards. I do want to put up an extra warning for anyone that's planning on making decks with these guys. It's that they are all artifacts, so they are way more easy to be removed on the battlefield by naturalized effects. But anyways guys, that was all for this long video. If you enjoyed the content, leave a like, and if you want to leave an opinion about the video or suggestion for another video, leave a comment down below. My name is Rusty, and I'll be seeing you guys on the next video. Bye bye!